Let's first open the session with a question that I want to pose to ma'am here to understand, are banks appropriately addressing the importance of financial technology?
In any time, there are always opportunities to leverage and risks to manage. So I think banks continue to do that. The question is just about how you can see the challenges, see the opportunities, and use them. You know, in this whole arena of digital banking, it's been happening at least for the last, say, 4 or 5 years. You know, we started by automating just regular transactions and then starting to offer what I would call digitally native products. You know, we started by just saying customers do payments, they ask for checkbooks, they do all of these transactions. So rather than having them do that manually on the mobile, and then we started to say that's just one part of it. And we saw that customers have become savvy. They have sort of embraced the social networking. And it gave us an opportunity to actually engage with the customers on an environment that they were comfortable with.
Let me ask Mani now, you know, from the financial technology point of view, you've been operating and you've seen a large pool of customers looking at, you know, your platform. Tell us about your own experience so far, the learnings from there, and really, what is the way forward?
I don't consider fintech as part of a technology initiative within the banking system. We have evolved from 90s to where we are today in 2016. Financial technology has become basically the infrastructure of doing business. How well the infrastructure is used effectively in terms of basically securing the transactions, securing the databases, and of course basically just maintaining it 24/7 for the customer convenience. And we at EPS actually do that for our customers. Our customer is a bank, in turn bank's customer is also our customer. We built up banking technology infrastructure on the retail side for every bank to use for serving their own customers. Over a period of basically just my organization being there, we have almost deployed 6,000 terminals across the country for various banks where that has been used by the banking customers on a transaction base. Meaning the risk of basically just keeping the ATM is my job, and if the customer doesn't come back and do a transaction, the bank doesn't pay me a transaction. Meaning I think I take the entire insulated risk from the bank in terms of maintaining, operating the network, but as and when it is available, if the customer does a transaction, and I make money.
Jai, I want you to come in now because, you know, when you talk about a customer, and that is the key here, we are all, you know, trying to grab as much of the, get that customers here to make it a business, viable business. What is it for a customer who's looking for a faster, more credible, and you know, way of doing business and be able to be serviced with as little risks as possible?
The whole removal of layers of process can make it faster. When it comes to cheaper, removal of, again, whole infrastructure which has been built up over years can make it cheaper. Better, it's a perception, and better has to be built over time, whether it is really better or the same product prepackaged. If we just automate a process which is there, if the entire process in the bank or any other financial institution is just whatever they have been following, if there's a layer of further digital or fintech is put on, remember it's an addition of a cost, and that's going to make the product costlier, not cheaper. The whole element of fintech, by definition, is doing things differently by changing things from, let's say, having a bank as an intermediary at all, maybe the removal of the whole bank, as you see in peer-to-peer lending, and really connecting the supply and the demand through a means and method which was not there earlier. It's another fact that technology is becoming, the cost of connecting and technology becomes cheaper with scale, and therefore technologically connecting people is now perceived to be cheaper. And where does that value then go? So that value then should be transferred and passed on to the customer. There are experiments across the world, even in India, where people are trying to give, let's say, 7% on a savings account. Instead of 4. 4 has gone to 6, 6 to 7. And there's no end to it. It's a question of how much of cost can you actually remove. It's not cost optimization. It's not cost re-engineering. It's a different model of doing business. So in a way, fintech by definition, I do agree with Mani that it's an evolution, but it has evolved to a state where fintechs can do things, some fintechs can do things to qualify it, in a very different way than how the traditional financial ecosystem was doing it. And then with a different cost structure. The cost structure may be cheaper or not cheaper, but that's where the customer should see value. Fintech is where the method of doing it changes, the KYC changes. I think as a customer, customers are going to like that. Customers like being recognized. Customers like not being categorized in a faceless mass. I think therein lies the impact which the customers would cotton on to. And once the critical mass, I'm sure you'll hear a lot of contextual stuff from Google. So there's another piece which is over proximity, understanding. But we can start from this. And therefore, of course, the risk management, which again I was talking about, the entire aspect of risk management, which today is done sometimes on parameters, on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet, can change onto micro risk management, knowing exactly the probability of default of a customer, probability of, let's say, enlargement of portfolio for a customer. All that can happen in a very granular fashion. And that's how I see the future.
Vikas, let me come to you and understand from the Google's point of view. We all know for anything that we want to know, Google is the answer. The search, as a search engine, your own inputs to this whole technology business and your own key inputs that you may want to sort of share with us here.
When we start looking at it, what we believe as Google is that there are micro moments that people are today, it's like leaving digital footprints in the digital world, and there are the birth of micro moments. Every time someone's actually searching, those are micro moments. When you search in terms of you want to compare a housing loan rate, you want to buy a best product in auto or whatever it is, you're actually showing intent. And these are micro moments, as we call it, and we believe that there are three things that go in the making of that and a better understanding of that, which is intent, context with which you will respond, and immediacy with which you will actually fulfill the deed, which is how we work with our customers and how we work with the marketeers in trying to get them to understand, or as I call it, demystify consumer behavior as we see it in the digital world. On Google search, when someone is actually using the search engine, you are actually showing intent for that point of time, which we believe is good for 60-day to 90-day period. And what we were able to do with Kotak was actually be able to now cast what car sales will be in the next month to the following month. And how much of that will come to Maruti, how much of that will come to Hyundai, et cetera, et cetera. And as we went deeper and deeper into the process and trying to demystify the footprint that the digital consumer was leaving, we actually saw trends where consumer financing was actually moving away from dealerships to outside. We actually saw a trend that consumer behavior was where in the entry level, second-hand cars was actually playing a stronger role today than buying an entry-level new car, because you could buy at the same price point. Basically, Indians are very price sensitive, and they are actually, it's quite amazing as an insight, color sensitive for a car that they are trying to buy, but they're okay with moving between brands. That insight can actually go towards production of the car, as a run-up when you're doing car launches, because you know in advance what's going to happen. Now, similarly, you have all this kind of data that is actually coming in for fintech through banking and financial services. Today, you're actually able to really look at in terms of emerging trends which are happening in terms of what do they want in personal financing, what do they want in terms of home loans, etc. In fact, 30% of home loans in the top 6 metros are actually booked online or are related to online. In the next couple of years, actually till the end of 2015, we had crossed 350 million people who came on the internet, right? And a majority of them started coming on the mobile phones, and a lot, which is about 2/3 of them still come through mobile phones, and about 175 million come through smartphones. what they are doing as a consumer with this newfound instrument that is giving them connectivity is actually mind-boggling. And that is where the immediacy part of it comes in. And this becomes a personal instrument which is so true to whatever you are doing today.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on most counts, but I want to understand, Arun, from you now, the role of differentiated models that have come up. For example, the payments bank, small finance bank. The regulator is talking about it, encouraging corporates to come on board. Of course, we saw some of them give up those licenses now. Trying their own financial technology, companies that they will be setting up, etc. But their role, I mean, and for the last mile connectivity, you think that's the future?
I think that's a complexity of a banking system which gives a robustness, because banking is a trusted system of the society. It's a foundational system of society where the infrastructure and the strength of the infrastructure is so much important. What he mentioned, Vikas mentioned that first 100 million customer took that much time and next 250 million didn't come because first $100 million customer took so much infrastructure layer which Google has created. And I think that's a deep point we need to make where strength of the platform is so important, where I have a contrarian view of fintech company. It may be a great hype over there for the valuation reason. I may be part of the fintech space, but this short-term player within a small investments, which is in tidbits, are not for financial sector. This may work in other sector, but financial sector is the respected, trusted sector which requires is learning from a large bank like SBI or Kotak or HDFCs. And I think the cost of technology they brought in, the point Joydeep was bringing, customer is looking for better, faster, cheaper. And I'm a student of design thinking, where I say design thinking is about customer desirability, technology role is make it feasible, and business role is to make it viable. So three pieces comes together. One is the intent, which Google is saying intent and context. Our role as a technology players is to make it feasible for banks to leverage it, which I call digital 360 as a technology. So digital is in action from business side, but underlying platform, which we invested over the last 7 years on building a digital enterprise, digital platform, I think that is an infrastructure layer on digital 360. Digital 360 means digital 180 means which is around customer, how he interacts with the bank, how a small finance bank can interact, how the payment bank can interact. That's the digital out part of it. And similarly, there's a digital in part of it. In part is around the business rules, around the regulations, around the workflows, around the fees and charges, around the product segmentation, around the product design. That's the digital in part of it. So a lot of time we are getting confused only on digital out with the app world. You can create a solution for just creating 2 apps or 4 apps or some mobile apps. You change the world. The challenge for Shiv Kumar or Aruna is not to look at that piece. They have to wire so many internal pieces which is there. And for that, like Intellect, we invested in 2 technologies. Over the last 7 years, 200 engineers are working on building digital in technology we call hub technology, creating a digital hub, which has got all the pieces wired. Similarly, we built up another technology called Canvas technology, where we say role-based Canvas technology for digital out. Now, this is a 200 people in investments for 7 years going on, and then on the top of it, you build the products on it. So sometimes the question is, similarly, this is on technology side. If I speak on a business side, I think the processes which SBI or private sector banks in India has put in together on making business and product innovations and operational integration and handling the change. You can still launch InCube. I was impressed with Arundhati's statement. They can still launch an InCube branch with a huge infrastructure of a brick and mortar which is sitting in a rural village. I think that is the power of how you bring a change. So I will call 5 things which is required for bringing a change is the business innovations, operation innovations, technology innovations, implementation innovation. And how do you support them together? We call it BOTIS, B-O-T-I-S, business, operation, technology, implementations, and support. By combining 5 of them, you need to have all the 5 innovations at the same time. And that's the challenge of a fintech disruption, and that's why I want to bring on the table that new banks which are coming up, the payment banks are coming up, they have an advantage because they can sit on any infrastructure. They can sit on a existing infrastructure, whether EPCI provides the infrastructure or Intellect provides the infrastructure. And they can just pay per use kind of a system which was not available for earlier banks to provide.
I want to bring in Shiv Kumar here in the conversation, and sir was talking about the fact that you guys have now with associate banks, which will make the total customer base beyond 50 crore, if the number is right.
Yeah, that's 50 crore.
That's huge. The humongous task of ensuring that these are the customers who are, who stay with you and are retained in faster, cheaper, and most effective way of, doing business. How do you ensure this mammoth task ahead of you?
So the challenge for us is that how to keep the stickiness of the customer, keep retaining the customer, rather than acquiring the new customer, keeping the existing customer, selling them more products or having a more cross-sell of the products is the key challenge, rather than going for a new acquisition. We can achieve our cost income ratio or the profitability targets if we can cross-sell the products to our existing customer base. For that, actually, we have to one of the key objectives is the customer experience. Unless the customer engagement is there, we will not be able to retain him in terms of whenever he is trying to interact with the bank, trying to give him very rich analytics-based advice or recommendations that which he could go for any other products or bundled products or the mutual funds within our associates and subsidiaries. So the various hook technologies, to bring the hook products, we have to use the hook technologies as well, which could be using big analytics, big data analytics, and based on that analytics, driving the customer experience so engaging in the mobile app, so that he does not have to think for a long time. In a short, decision cycle needs to be very, very short. So giving him upfront, the pre-approvals or approvals, depending on the ticket size of the consumer loans or home loans, based on his behavioral analysis, how he has approached to the bank to apply for the loan, or any other past behavioral analysis which you carry out,
Sure.
like all the balances which he is maintaining with the bank. So based on this, how quickly I can offer the decision to the customer that this is the right product for you and I'm ready to offer you
Sure,
at this
so adapting to
discounted
the
rate.
customer needs as fast as you can. But
Yes.
tell me, and the feedback that we get from people who use bank services when you talk about internet banking, for example, mobile banking, etc. Do you think public sector banks are still behind the private sector banks on the overall interface and the experience that they get on, let's say, for example, an HDFC or an ICICI bank? And this is from people who use it, tend to sort of talk about it. How quickly are you able to address that as an issue? Because then in that process you lose out a lot of customers.
Among the technology savvy people, we see that today we have largest amount of mobile banking transactions going through the mobile applications of the State Bank of India. And when we compare it with the rest of the banking industry. So we can definitely see that people are, coming to the mobile apps of the SBI or PSU sector banks. So people are basically seeking the convenience. So, I think PSU sector banks applications are coming to the age which are now very, close competition is there between the private sector banks and the PSU banks, and sometimes, it's a leapfrog for the PSU banks. where if they have embarked later on the technology, but they have the lot of latest technology available, which probably the private sector banks have to transition to, and transitioning will take much longer time, while the PSU banks can leapfrog very quickly to the newer technologies.
But I'll come to Aruna ma'am, to understand from you, as a banker, you think just setting up a department which takes care of technology and innovation addresses most issues, or what is the biggest challenge when you are fighting for a share of pie where everybody else, be it public sector banks, private sector banks, financial technology companies, and now of course payments banks, small banks, it's just all around you. Even mobile companies now, how do you compete and be ahead of the curve? Obviously innovation is one thing to say, but everybody has been, working on that. Is that the biggest challenge?
We've always thought about going from a supplier, adding some value to whatever we have, the product or the service, and then taking it out to the consumer. So I call that pipeline thinking. And I think we really have to move to become a platform thinker. A platform is something that will allow the suppliers and the consumers to connect. And if you see the success of many of the fintechs or the e-commerce or even banks, the spectacular success that you see, or even Airbnb, which Ms. Arundhati mentioned earlier, they are all platforms. So the ability of a player, whether coming from the financial services or the technology company providing finance, fintechs, I think that is going to be definitely a possibility of how we can go forward in a more robust way. And this includes, when I say platform, there's of course the technology aspect, correct? We're all technology folks, that's the part of it. But there's also the thinking of how we're going to provide services around that, how we're going to manage risk around that. That could be fraud risk or credit risk. For example, we talked earlier and Mani mentioned that you have a payment risk. So if you have a platform and you order something, whether if it doesn't reach, does the customer pay you? So you have to manage that payment risk. In a lending platform where you have brought, say, a P2P together on your platform, you have to manage the credit risk. So the provider who can eventually provide these platforms, technical capabilities, services, risk, I think is going to be a winner in this new digital world.
They will be a part of it. We had a great time, of course, discussing and debating a whole host of opportunities, risks, etc. attached to the whole fintech business and how banks are embracing that to become better and to be able to service a customer better. Thank you indeed, everybody, for being here, and thanks everyone on the panel to give your insightful comments on this. Thank you very much.